So they basically asked me to come and just talk to you a little bit about traveling for cheap. I don't profess to be an expert at cheap travel by any means, but I've done a couple interesting things, I think, as far as cheap travel and trying to get others out traveling for cheap. And so hopefully I can at least give you some information that you find valuable, and if there's no information that you find valuable, I heard you're getting extra credit and some free food. So that's at least a positive. So this is my family and me. I'm married. I have 3 small little kids, and he kind of did a good introduction about me. I did my undergrad at the Y, so I majored in business there and mathematics, and then ended up coming up to the U and did, as he mentioned, a JD and an MBA here. So I have a lot of love for the U. We have season tickets to a lot of the sporting events. Anyway, I love the U, basically. So when they asked me to come speak, I was just like, great, that's wonderful. I'd love to come talk to the students up here. And actually funny, I had Marcy's class. When I saw her in the hall, she's like, hi, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I took your class. So, great experience. All right, so most of you guys probably don't know me from my practice at a law firm, which is what I do now full time. I've been doing that for 7 years. You probably, if you know me at all, it's probably from Flights from Home. It started as an Instagram account. I put this I pulled this Instagram picture from my account yesterday or a couple days ago when I was doing this slideshow. This is where it all started. This was the post that I put on my personal Instagram account that was like, hey guys, I'm starting this account where I like to share travel deals to friends and family. If you want to follow over there, go ahead. I'm not going to text you deals anymore, and I'm not going to beg you to come on trips with me anymore. So if you just want to follow this account, rock on. One thing my husband and I always joke that we think's funny about this is if you notice in the caption of the post, I initially started Flights from Home as EH Flight Deals, which is my initials. And my husband and I always joke that it's like, flight deals, it's not that good. And so over the course of time, we changed it to Flights from Home because really, Flight Deals is a super lame name. So this is what it is now. It grew really organically because people like to travel cheap. And basically, if you don't know anything about the account, what it does is it shares cheap flights out of Salt Lake City. Over time, so as I started running the account, grew and grew, we eventually came up with an email subscription to go with the account. And so people could subscribe to either free emails or paid emails for like a premium service. That was done mostly because as the account grew, it became more and more work. And it was just not possible for one person to do it alone. So it needed to expand. So my husband and I ended up rolling out that subscription service. And then ultimately, we ended up selling the business. So I no longer own Flights from Home. Started it, grew it, expanded it, sold it. But I will say, I still love it, and I'm a subscriber. So I'm really happy with what the individual that bought it has done with it. I've been really happy with that transition. I was really stressed when I was going to sell the account because it was like basically a passion project for me. It was like my baby. And when I was transitioning it away, I really wanted to make sure that it went to someone who was at least going to carry it on and like service the community in a good fashion and just not totally like trash it or not like just like rip down my account and start selling socks from, my account or like something random. So that's me in a nutshell. This is one of my favorite like travel memes. It always just cracks me up because it's me, I really want to travel, bank account, like to the backyard. And I feel like I feel that way. I feel like everybody has felt that way, probably in one form or another during their course of their life. Like travel is something that's really awesome. I'm really passionate about it. I'm really passionate about getting out. I have 3 little kids now. So just so you kind of know, when I was in college, I was a waitress. I wasn't didn't have a lot of money. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. But travel has always been something that was important to me and that I wanted to be able to do. And now that my family's grown, obviously travel has become more expensive, right? Because the more people that you take, it becomes more and more expensive. So even though my career has progressed and now I'm in a job that pays me a little bit more, I still am like really conscientious about traveling for a good price and like making it affordable. And plus I also think like the more affordable you can make it, the more trips you can take, right? And who doesn't like taking more trips than just one? So I just wanted to touch on a couple, excuse me, pre-trip like budgeting things that I think are important. These are things that I kind of consider in connection with like my travel spirit, I guess. One is prioritize. So you've probably heard this before. You've probably heard this in your personal financial planning class. If travel is a priority to you, then prioritize it in your finances. So for instance, I don't drive a really nice car. I don't get like new clothes very often. My kids, like, they do not wear really, really nice apparel. Like most of their clothes come from Costco or, you know, some other place that I can find like a deal. But we do put funds aside to travel. We have like a budget every year that this is our travel money. We plan on that and we spend that a year. And that's like very much of a part of our finances. A couple other things in like saving a buck or two, I guess, on travel is destination flexibility. So maybe you guys all have this dream of going to like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some place that's like really expensive. Whatever your wildest dreams are as far as like expensive travel is concerned. And maybe that's where you want to go this year. That price might never drop. It might never be a cheap place to travel. So maybe if you're a little bit flexible and you can find like other places that are also high on your list, those places might be cheaper and you might be able to get just as great of a vacation out of that. The way we kind of travel, we have a list of like probably 10 places that we want to go. And as those things pop up like for cheap, for like a flight, or mostly it's dictated by flights, we'll snag that flight and we'll go. So it's not always like, hey, we're gonna go to China this year, or it's like, hey, we wanna go all these places. If one of those happens to show up for cheap, that's where we're going this year. Date flexibility. I know sometimes that's hard when you're in college, right? Because you have classes that you can't miss. But to the extent that you can be flexible with your dates, like maybe flying out on a midweek instead of like the weekend, or traveling during the off season. So for us, we usually travel, we do 2 international trips typically a year. Those are not typically done in the summer. We usually try to do them over like spring break or fall break because that's the off season for most places. So usually flights are cheaper, hotels are cheaper. You know. We also don't usually travel on weekends, so we don't usually fly on a Saturday or a Sunday. If we have to, we will, but we usually try to save that money, and we fly out on like a Monday. If it's a really long trip, we'll fly out on a Monday, save the whole week, get the 2 weekends, and then, or a Friday, get the 2 weekends, and then fly back on a Monday, rather than like a Saturday to a Saturday. Now, some people's schedules don't allow for that, but that's just like an idea of a way that you can save money. Visas. So that's one thing when you travel. Some countries require visas, and some visas are not cheap. They're hundreds of dollars. So before you book that trip, or you know, are thinking of going to a place, plan that in your budget, right? Because it's kind of a really disappointing thing when you book a really cheap flight and you're like, oh, I saved all this money, and then 3 weeks later you're like, oh, I need a visa, and like, oh, it's $300. Last thing on this list is be a realist, right? So if right now your personal finances are all they're going to allow you to do is like go camping in Moab, that's great. If you saw like in the first slide, one of my favorite pictures of my family was a camping trip in Moab that we took last year. So do that. If they allow you to do a little more, great, do that. But like the point of it is that I really firmly believe that everybody can travel in some fashion, especially if you prioritize it in your budget. So big trips, small trips, whatever, just get out. So here's one thing. These are 3 trips that we took in the last couple years that I wanted to kind of just touch on the flexibility of location. So the one right there, that is, you guys probably, if you like Lord of the Rings or Lego Lord Cambodia, and then the farthest one is in Bosnia. And so none of these, I mean, New Zealand, that's kind of always been on our bucket list. When we found cheap flights, we just snagged it and went. But we hadn't gone in prior years because we had never found cheap flights to it. So it wasn't one that we had put off until we had been able to find a deal. Cambodia, that was one that a cheap flight just popped up, and it was always kind of interest to us. So we were like, yeah, let's do it. Sounds awesome. We went, and I asked my husband to rank our favorite places that we've ever been. That one is the top of our list. Both of our husbands, my husband and I. It was our favorite trip. It's just, we could not say enough good things about that place. Also, plus when you get over there, things are so cheap. Hotels, food, everything. So if you can get a cheap flight to a place like that, then you can save a little bit of money when you're over there because it's not that expensive. Bosnia, that one was done we had a cheap flight. We got a cheap flight to Croatia, which was a little bit more on our bucket list. If you can tell in that picture, so that's me and my daughter. We're both in warm jackets because we took the trip in March. We didn't take it during peak season. So when we were in Bosnia, I have pictures of us in Bosnia, and we've got scarves on and hats, and it was wonderful. We had a great time. And Bosnia probably was not on the top of my bucket list. I actually hadn't even crossed my mind until we had decided we were kind of gonna go over to Croatia for the same reason, cheap flights. But we did. We explored the country, and it was wonderful. So anyway, the point is just kind of maybe have a little bit more flexibility in your destination to be open to new places, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay, this is my favorite search engine, Google Flights. So I'm gonna you guys maybe are all tech whizzes out there, maybe you're all search whizzes, but this is how I use it. These are some of my favorite tips from Google Flights, so I thought maybe I'd pass them on. My mom, when I was driving over here today, she's like, no one knows how to search. And I'm like, Mom, you're a mom, and you don't even know how to use the internet. So these kids are not like that. They are sharp, and they all know how to use this. But anyway, so if you can take something away from it, great. If not, great too. All right. Okay. So with Google Flights, I can see this a little bit better. I hope you guys can all see this, but this is just kind of a general shot of Google Flights. It allows you to search. I put Salt Lake City. You can see the destination up there is open, where to. It's got dates. It's got these nice little things that sometimes populate on the side that are hey, these are cool things you could consider. But what's cool is they have a map over here that kind of will tell you for those dates how much travel prices are to each of the destinations. So you can kind of do a little bit of exploring and maybe find something that's cheap by looking at that map. So one thing that I love about Google Flights is let's say, and we use this a lot, let's say we want to go to Europe, okay? Or in this case, I'm going to use Hawaii as an example. My family and I, we love Hawaii. We're a sucker for cheap Hawaii flights. If there's ever one, I feel we just book it and go. But we don't care what island. We will go to any of the islands. We do not discriminate. So when we search, or when I search for flights, we'll do Salt Lake and we'll do Hawaii. You can put a broad location base in Google Flights, so you can put Europe there. Let's say you just wanted to go to Europe. You don't care where. You just want to get over there. Or you want to go to Asia. Or you want to go to the Pacific Islands or Africa. You can just type in the destination there, and then it'll pop up a list of places for you and the flight prices to those different places within that geographical region. Hopefully that makes sense. If anybody has questions, if we're going to do this, feel free. Because I want to make sure you understand this, I guess, to the extent you want. The other cool thing about Google Flights is they have a specific date option or they have a flexible date option. So like I said, we're pretty flexible when we travel, so we always choose the flexible dates because we want to go when it's cheap. Here's just a little bit, another screenshot of the flexible dates. So you can hit flexible dates, and then it'll be 1 week trip in the next 6 months. And then Google Flights will kind of tell you hey, in the next 6 months, if you want to go here, this is when it's going to be the cheapest. You can also say look, March is my spring break, so I'm just going to search for flights in March. Or I have June off or whatever. But I don't care when in the month of June I go. So you can kind of, if you look at the bottom, play with that a little bit, and it'll help you locate when it's cheap. So then, once you maybe pick a location. I can't remember what this one was. This might have been Maui. Also, I'm just going to tell you, none of these, well, most of these slides are not big deals. So, but anyway, when I was screenshotting these, I was like, hopefully it would be cool if there was like something really awesome going on right now, but there wasn't. Anyway, so this was Salt Lake to Maui. Then when you narrow down your search, like for the dates, these cool little the cool little calendars will populate below, and Google Flights will highlight some green dates that are the cheapest. So Google Flights like really help you narrow down how to get to the cheapest flights. And maybe those will work for you for traveling, and maybe they won't, and you're still on the hunt for another cheap flights. So another thing like that Google Flights can do that, as I've had kids has become more and more important to me is it can limit down like the number of stops to your destination, because maybe you find a really cheap flight like $400 to Asia or something like that, but you stop 7 times. That's probably, in my opinion, a bad value. It may be cheap, but it's not a good value. You could, let's say you hate certain airlines. Maybe you don't like budget airlines. Maybe you don't want to fly Frontier. The airlines you can get rid of, what airlines you don't want to fly on. Or like if you are only want to fly on a certain airline, you can also change that. The times, that's the one that I like a lot of times will mess with, because you can change the duration. Sometimes you'll find a flight super cheap. It has a 32-hour layover in like one city. I don't want to be wandering around with kids in one city for like 32 hours, like as I'm going. So I'll try to get rid of those like long duration flights. That being said, if I didn't have kids, maybe a 32-hour layover would be really cool because I could get out of the airport and wander around for a little bit. So maybe that's something you like. But again, it's just the tool will allow you to do different things for different preferences. So once you have decided, hey, these are the flights that I like, you can select them. And it will, these are just like 2 that I picked. I wanted just to kind of draw your attention to this. In recent years, I think hopefully people know this, maybe you don't. A lot of airlines, to compete with budget-friendly airlines or budget airlines, like Frontier is a budget airline, they've rolled out what's called basic economy fares. So you'll see like Delta, American, United, they have these basic economy and economy fares, and they have certain restrictions. One of the biggest restrictions that I think is like a negative in the basic economy fares is no carry-on bags, right? So you have to pay for a checked bag. So that adds to the cost of your like bottom line. So you just want to be aware of that. The way my family does it is we tend to pack really light. We still use the basic economy flights. I don't actually think I've ever upgraded to a main cabin fare ever, now that I think about it. And we just pack one big freaking suitcase and all throw our stuff in one suitcase, check one bag for everybody, and be on our way. So we haven't really obviously we're going to have to pay for a checked bag because we're 3 kids, but that's one way we've kind of tried to minimize costs with that. But it's just something to be aware of. Oh, this is another cool thing about Google Flights. If you just go to Google Flights and you type in Salt Lake, you can, there's just this little button over here. It says Explore Destinations. I tried to highlight it. But you can click that button and it will just kind of be like a flexible search for you, and you can just cruise around this map. And I zoomed in just so you could kind of see what it showed as far as the locations and the prices. But you can drag that map. You can go over to Europe and poke around in Europe, and you can poke around anywhere. And then when you click into these prices that they have, it'll narrow down the search for you and show you what the actual flight is that is going to get you to Las Vegas for $78 or Phoenix for $57. Okay, so a couple other additional tips when using Google Flights, or mostly with Google Flights. One, Google Flights actually will track flights for you. So let's say you have more specific dates that you are going to travel on. You can go into Google Flights, you can search for your flight, and then you can get email notifications to your email. You can just select track this flight, and it'll notify you if that price drops. Usually when I track a flight, let's say we're flying over we have to go over some break.
I'll like track like 5 different flights, like if I fly out on Friday versus this day, or Saturday versus this day, so that, you know, if maybe not my exact flight drops, but the day before, the day after does, then I get notification of that too. Another tip that we like to use is basically cross the oceans for cheap. So if you want to go to Europe, and let's say your heart is set on Germany, right? You want to go to Germany. I don't personally see flights dropping to Germany like all that frequently. They do, but just not as often. One place that really does drop frequently though is Amsterdam. And it's pretty close to Germany, and you can take a train into Germany pretty easily from Amsterdam. So consider, when you want to go to Germany or, you know, other locations around the globe, consider flying into a close location and then taking alternate transport to your final destination, or where like your dream place is. The biggest cost usually with airlines is when you fly over that ocean. So if you can get across the ocean for cheap, a lot of times you can travel within the country or like the close proximity for cheap as well. Google Flights will allow you to do multiple city searches too. So a lot of times I think people kind of forget about this, but it's like for Europe we use it a lot. If there's multiple cities that are on sale, so this picture is when we went to Italy, and when we booked that trip, basically all of the cities in Italy were on sale. So we flew into Naples and we flew out of Rome, instead of just booking round trip flights in and out of Rome. And that saved us money when we got over there, because then we were able to start Naples, kind of do the south coast, and then head up to Rome and do area around there. And then we were able to fly out of Rome. We didn't have to go back down to Naples. We didn't have to like try to make a huge circle. We were able to kind of go from one place to the other. That would work. Like I've known friends or people that do that a lot when like Europe goes on sale, and they'll do like Amsterdam, into Amsterdam, out of Paris, or you know, something like that. And then they're able to do a little bit more. So just keep that in mind when you're searching. This is just, I just wanted to do a little screenshot so you kind of could see in Google Flights, this is how, like you would do a multi-city search basically. You could do round trip, one-way, multi-city. And that box that's hidden right now would be Salt Lake, where to, where from, Salt Lake. So that would be like to Amsterdam, where from, Paris to Salt Lake. And you can add like, you can do like a ton of those. Like you can even start getting like your, you know, from Paris to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to wherever. I will say though, sometimes when you're doing those connecting flights, like I find it cheaper to do just like in one city out of another, and to like book those connecting flights individually. Sometimes when you start getting a real big chain on Google Flights, it becomes really like, I don't know why, it just like pulls expensive flights in. So sometimes getting that huge chain is not always the cheapest. Southwest Airlines. This is an airline we fly a lot because one thing I love about them is they offer 2 free checked bags. So when you have kids, sometimes that's better to be able to, like, obviously have a free checked bag. Those don't come up on Google Flights, but they are like a great airline, and they're oftentimes really cheap, especially to California. So if you want to do like a short trip to California, this is, you want to search Southwest separately. Southwest has a low fare calendar. I don't ever like go into Southwest and say like, oh, fly out this day and fly back this way. I always just go to their low fare calendar, and you can do like a departure city, an arrival city, and then a month, and then you get this like great little matrix of cheap days to fly. So again, if you're like flexible, you can kind of pick, hey, if I fly out Friday, it's cheaper versus Saturday. So this is my favorite rule to use. I guess I call it the 24-hour cancellation rule. So under the TSA like requirements legally, and most airlines will give you 24 hours to cancel a flight, full refund. This is when you book directly with the airline. So you book through United site, through Delta site. You generally have 24 hours, full refund to cancel that flight. If you're booking with a third party, so like Priceline, Expedia, I don't know, there's tons we'll talk about. I'll have a slide about third parties a little bit later. You want to check their policies. I know Priceline does a 24-hour cancellation rule, but some of them don't, so like, just be aware. But with airlines, when you book direct for the airlines, that they do. So my advice, book when it's cheap. Take that 24 hours to think about it, cancel if you need to. A lot of times cheap flights will come and go within hours. So like, you can't wait I don't wait. If I see something, I'm just like, half the time I won't even talk to my husband about it. I'll be like, hey, I just picked these days. Like, hopefully that'll work for us. So this picture, quick story about this roll. This picture was taken, there were some really cheap JetBlue flights a couple of years ago to New York and Boston. And I was like, oh, I haven't been like to New York in years. Boston I've actually never been to. So we were like, those both sound super fun. We don't know which one we want to go to. I actually booked them both. Talked to my husband. We kind of like decided, hey, like which one's going to work better for our schedule, which one's going to be more fun, which one do we really want to do. We decided New York. We did that discussion within that 24-hour period, canceled Boston. So you can use that to your advantage to get that cheap deal, and then figure out babysitters, figure out time off work, and if you can't figure out that, then you can just cancel in that 24-hour period. No harm, no foul. Okay, so what's a good deal? How do you know what a good deal is? This is tricky, right? I honestly think the only way really to know like what a good deal is to kind of watch and be familiar with your destination. There's also like, I mean, if you're local, right, and you follow Flights from Home, like you would probably see them posting deals to certain geographical areas, and that can kind of give you an idea of what they think is a good deal, right? I put this slide up here because Google Flights is trying to do this thing where they tell you what a good deal is, like, hey, this is a great value based on, all their matrices. But up here, like, they're saying, hey, great value, Rome, $800. I would never book Rome for $800. Like, I don't think that's a good deal. So, my point of this is just because Google Flights is telling you it's a good deal doesn't always mean it is a good deal. It's good to do, like, your due diligence on that flight, right, and that destination. Also, if you're flying like over the holidays, right, it's going to depend on the time of year that you're flying, right? You're flying peak season, summer. What's a good deal for a summer flight to Europe is not going to be what's a good deal for an October flight to Europe. Those are going to vary like dramatically. Same thing if you're going over Christmas. If you're flying like the day before Christmas and you're flying back like New Year's Day, you're going to pay a lot more for those flights, especially like even domestic flights, than you're going to be paying like if you just went home on a whim, mid-semester. So basically, like as far as deciding what is a good deal, my advice would be to, if you have your heart set on going somewhere, to kind of just monitor that place, kind of get an idea of what you feel is a good deal and what you'd be willing to look for, I guess. Kayak Explore. Honestly, the only way I ever find Kayak Explore is by typing into Google bar Kayak Explore, and then it pops up. But so Kayak Explore has this basically like a map, Salt Lake City to anywhere, anytime, any duration, and just gives you this map. So sometimes I think that's like fun. If you're just like, hey, I want to go on a fun trip sometime, I don't really care, I've just got time off. You can kind of peruse this and like scroll around and see like, oh hey, there's some like cheap flights to, whatever location. When I was doing this one, I like clicked on the ones to Cancun. So when you click into it, it'll pull up the actual flight. And this is one thing I kind of just wanted to mention. These flights, when I actually clicked into it and pulled up, and it was like, okay, you can fly on Frontier on the way out, and Frontier on the way back, and you're gonna pay $334. Now, I am not like, don't get me wrong here, I'm not like anti-budget airlines at all. Actually, like we've long budget airlines numerous times. I just think you need to be aware. Frontier's a budget airline. There's others out there like Spirit, Allegiant. You just need to be aware of their costs and fees before you book with them. Because what may appear to be like dollar for dollar, like hey, this one's $330, maybe Delta is $360, so Frontier's $30 cheaper. You're not going to get a carry-on bag with Frontier. You're not going to get to select your seats. There's like other, costs that you would pay extra for on Frontier. And if those matter to you, me, the biggest one is bags, right? Like I always factor the cost of a bag in with whatever I'm traveling in, either like a checked bag or a carry-on bag if I'm going to have to pay for that. So anyway, just be aware that those budget airlines are out there and don't just like see the cheap flight and just book it. One thing with budget airlines that like I used to do when I didn't have kids, so basically their carry-on rule is like, in my mind, it's basically if you can fit it under the seat in front of you, then you can carry it on the plane. So they don't give you access to the overhead space. So if you're going for a quick weekend and you can pack in a backpack that fits under your seat, then you don't have to pay for their carry-on bag, right? And maybe you don't care where you sit. So budget airlines can actually be super friendly for those purposes. The other thing I wanted to mention is like there's different online travel agents. And those are things like up here you'll see Just Fly, like right under that 381 number. And then you'll see Frontier, or like here you see Cheap Tickets, Orbitz, Expedia. I usually, if I can find the cheap flight directly with the airline, I try to book with them. That's my preference, because if you have to change that ticket or you run into some issues for whatever reason, it's easier to work directly with the airline than it is with a third party. But sometimes you can find a really cheap flight through those third parties. Just be aware, like there's like, you know, some pros and cons of booking with a third party, like in, you know, that they're not directly with the airline. So, you know, when you find that cheap flight, just be aware of that. Here's some other good places to find cheap flights. These will most likely send you to a third party. Skyscanner, I've used Priceline before. Momondo actually is a search engine that will probably pull up arguably one of the cheapest, like, so if you find a cheap flight on Google Flights, you could probably beat that by a little bit by going through Momondo. Momondo's not going to send you to the airline directly though. So that's one of those things where you're going to have to decide if booking with some, you know, online travel agent that you maybe don't know that much about, like JustFly.com or Fairboom, or you know, there's a million of them out there. If the savings are worth the risk of not being directly booked directly through the airline. And what I mean, like as far as those like risks are concerned, like a lot of those, I think just have to do with if you end up having to change your ticket, or there's like a problem, like say you missed your like connecting flight, like say you have a tight layover and you missed your second flight, and you're there at the airport and you're like, hey, I booked with Fairboom and I need to get on this other flight. Like sometimes like people maybe have run into situations where the airline's like not as accommodating. They're like, yo, you have to call Fairboom or fly Zoom or you know whatever else to get this worked out. So pros and cons, just be, but these are out there, so and can save you money. So now you've booked your flight, you're ready to go, maybe. You got to think about visas. I think about vaccines because of my kids. A place for this, great places where I always go for like information is the travelstate.gov website. If you're not familiar with this, it's just like super great to like check out your destination before you go. That little tab is red, says international travel before you go, and then you just type in the country that you are going to go to. So our next trip is going to be to Panama, so this is Panama. The biggest thing that I always check on these things is for a visa. So this says no tourist visa required. Great, I don't have to get a visa. If they recommend like anything else, it'll be told here. And then there's like more detailed information below, like, you know, travel advisories, places maybe you shouldn't go. Obviously, like this is stuff that you're just gonna have to weigh pros and cons, like what risks you want to accept, what you don't care about. But it's a great source of information. The reason that, go ahead.
Have you ever booked with a third-party agency and had your ticket not actually been returned?
So, okay, this is a great question. Yes and no. So I've never booked with a third party and the ticket, okay, so yes and no. So a lot of times if you like have a mistake fare, like the third parties will make mistakes and they will flash like super cheap flights for like to New Zealand or to, you know, wherever. What sometimes will happen is the mistake will be a legit mistake from the airline that they've passed on to the third parties. So that's why the third parties are advertising these tickets for cheap. The airline corrects the mistake, the third party doesn't correct the mistake, and so that ticket is still floating out there. That doesn't happen like a ton, right? Because a lot of times they're quick to catch the mistake as well. But so I've had that happen before, like where I was too slow to get it through the airline, but I'm like, hey, I'm still gonna take this chance and hopefully get it. So one that I usually will do in that case is Priceline, because they're like a little bit more, I've had them cancel tickets before, I've had them not cancel tickets before, so I'm like, I'll roll the dice with you guys. So if I can find it through them, I do. What will usually happen if they decide that they are not gonna honor the fare, they'll shoot me an email and they'll say, sorry, this fare was no longer valid and it's disappointing, but I've always got my money back. Sometimes it takes time, like it takes like 10 days or whatever for them to refund you, but that's like the worst that I've never had like one of these third parties like scam me, if that makes sense, like steal my money. Not to say that they don't do that, I don't know, I've just never has happened to me. But that's usually kind of the situation of like, what'll happen is they'll refund you the money. And then you'll just be sad because you didn't get the cheap flight. But, okay, so this is just a couple little things on planning a trip on a budget. So when you book your trip, estimate your expenses, right? One thing we always do is we identify our big ticket items when we're going over there, things that we really, really want to do and we really want to spend our money on. And then prioritize those as far as like our budgeting is concerned. So these pictures, when we went to New Zealand, we wanted to do some rafting. That was not cheap, but that was like one of the, that and that Hobbiton, I always forget, Hobbiton slide that you saw in the beginning, those two things were more expensive. But other than that, we really didn't do like a ton of big ticket items over there. We spent most of the time playing on beaches and doing hikes and stuff that didn't cost money. So we balanced it out that way. Same thing, like I went on a trip one time with friends. We went to Europe and we were in France. And I knew some of my friends probably would never get back to France again. And I just say this because, so we went to the Louvre and we ended up not going into the Louvre. They wanted to get all the way there, they didn't want to pay the $30 to get into the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa and everything else, so it's right in there. And my mind was quasi-blown because I was just like, you guys just literally paid like $700 or however much you paid to get here, plus hotel, whatever. And like, you're not going to pay to like do this. But it wasn't a big ticket item for them, so maybe that's pros and cons. But just like, take into account the finances of the trip in whole. And transportation, once you're there, are you going to rent a car? Are you going to do Ubers? Are you going to do the public transit system? We are cheap, we public transit as much as we can. Are you going to do a hotel? Are you going to do an Airbnb? Are you going to stay in a hostel? I've stayed in all of those. Pros and cons, right, about all of them. Right now we usually stay in Airbnbs because we have a kitchen, which I love because I can buy food and save money on food when we're over there. All right, that I think is all my tips. We have like a little bit of time left if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, go ahead. Yeah, so how do I get out, right? So again, I think that is like kind of a priority thing, right? Like, we just make it a priority to like travel. And so this is one thing I will tell you guys, like when you are in college right now, maybe your schedule is more flexible, maybe it's less flexible. But like when you get out into the workforce, so I get my law firm. My firm is great. I love them. I cannot say enough good things about them. But when I started working, I prioritized travel from the beginning. Like my firm just kind of knew Emily's going to take a trip like a couple times a year, and she's not going to be there, but she's going to get her work done other times, and it's going to be fine. And I kind of set that as like a precedent right out of the chute. So it's not really like, now that I've been there for 7 years, it's not an issue anymore. When I tell them I'm like leaving for a week or whatever, they know that I'm like not gonna just abandon them and I'm gonna make sure stuff gets done. Does that make sense, kind of? Hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Anybody else?
Have you benefited from like American Express or like Southwest cards or Marriott cards from all the travel you've done?
Yeah, so this is where I wish I was there, because I know there's people out there that travel hack points, and I have a good friend that's like really, really good at it, and I just haven't gotten good at it. Last year, there was a really good deal on the Southwest card. Like if you opened up the Southwest card, you got a companion fare for free for the entire year. So I did, just so that I could have that free ticket the whole year, and we used it. But most of my cards that I use, I get cash back, and then I use the cash to book a cheap flight. That's kind of, but I know there's people that do travel half points, and that is a great route to go. I just wish I knew more about it. Any other questions?
When you had your flight canceled, third party, how far in advance was that of the actual flight?
So that's a really great question. It was like months in advance. Usually if they're gonna cancel it, they pull it back. Like within, I'd say like 10 days to 2 weeks. So like most of the time, when I was running flights from home and there was like a mistake there, people would always be like, I booked this, are they gonna cancel it? And I'm like, I don't know, I booked it too, but we'll find out together. So, usually it's like a 2 week, I'd say. I would always kind of be like, hold off, and that's a great, so like, if you book that cheap flight that maybe seems too good to be true, and you're like nervous someone's like, the airline's gonna pull it back, wait like 2 to 3 weeks before you book anything that's non-cancelable in your destination. So hold off on getting way too excited about booking that hotel or that hostel or whatever you're gonna stay in, and just like, give them time to like work through that, and then usually if you're about 3 weeks after that, then they're probably not gonna pull it back.
What websites or agencies do you recommend for finding good places to stay other than an Airbnb, like a hostel?
So it's been, the last time I really stayed in hostels was when I was in college, so it's been years. So I probably don't have any like great recommendations, like person recommendations. The ones that I use now mostly, like for our family, we use like VRBO, HomeAway, Airbnb a lot. And then we use, like, I'll like a lot of times we'll like use TripAdvisor or Kayak or Google recently has rolled out Google Hotels. So if you're like looking for a hotel, I've been intrigued on their like how well they're like doing at finding hotels. So that's kind of one of their newer products, but I like their flights so much that I'm like, I'm kind of like interested, so I've used that too. Anybody else? Oh, go for it.
Can I just say something about the credit cards?
Yeah.
So I have a Delta American Express, and what I do is I literally just like pay my tuition with it, and then while we have stuff to pay tuition, I literally sometimes always get a free flight because of the amount of points.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And like going along with that, like I mean anything if you're gonna make a large cash outlay, if you can put people have various opinions on like whether or not credit cards are a good thing in general, right? For like budgeting purposes, but my opinion is you can put that on a credit card, score some points, and then pay it off immediately so you're not like dinged. Then why not? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my next one is just kind of to get outside is better. But again, if you guys are careful, you are in and out of that stuff on a credit card and pay it off immediately, then okay, great. If you're not doing that, it's not a good idea, right? The more you pay for the rest of your life, you want to make sure that you're able to manage, points and cash and paying off those credit cards. I always just be really cautionary when you're looking at credit cards.
Yeah, and I'm gonna second that. Like I 100% like agree with that. Like my whole like method to travel is like do it within your means, right? Like, and that's why like I try to travel for cheap. If you put it on a credit card like a trip, and then you end up paying interest on it for 4 years, that's like not a cheap trip anymore. But now it's a really expensive trip. So basically, yeah, just like whatever you can do. I'm a huge proponent, like I said, of getting out and getting and traveling, but like it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. Like it can be, yeah, a trip to Moab or a trip to California or like Texas or something like that. Like a lot of times there's cheap flights into like Austin, which is an awesome city to like roam around in for a little while. But and if that's all you can do now, then great. But just get out.